Boo! Did that scare you? If so, you may want to tune out now. Okay, so Dead Space 2 picks up a few years after the first one left off. But really, all you need to know is that Isaac is back, he's going crazy, and he's trapped in a straitjacket for the first several minutes of gameplay, which is terrifying. Seriously, I know some of you would disagree, but Dead Space is one of the scariest games I've ever played. And Dead Space 2 is just about equally terrifying. You really don't know fear until you find yourself running away, constrained to a straitjacket, and completely helpless against the enemies. Of course, you're not completely helpless for the whole game. Oh no, you'll soon collect a small army's base worth of weapons, some old such as a returning plasma saw, or new like the javelin gun. What matters is that they all feel quite different, forcing you to use them strategically lest you run out of ammo. You can also upgrade these weapons, as well as your powers and suit, by embedding nodes you find within a skill tree for any given object. I really enjoy the metagame of choosing where to place the nodes, as it requires some strategic thinking as the placement dictates when and what upgrades become available. Now, one improvement made in Dead Space 2 is the manner in which enemies appear. While most are still trigger-based, that is, they appear right after interacting with something or crossing an invisible line, the triggers are much less obvious than in Dead Space 1, where it felt like some monsters would pop out every time you picked up a health pack. Everything feels a little more unpredictable now, and just that much scarier as a result, since you never really do know when something might happen. Another element that has changed significantly since the first game is how Zero-G works. Instead of jumping across zero gravity in a straight line, Isaac is now equipped with a jetpack, allowing for complete freedom of movement. I rather dislike this change, as not only are jetpacks overplayed, but it also makes enemy encounters much less intimidating, knowing they can easily jetpack away. Of course, the game's tension is only helped by the fantastic visuals that truly convey the horrific environment you're trapped within. With that said, the very setting of the game also restricts the amount of diversity within the environments. Don't get me wrong, there are copious settings to explore, but they all kind of blur together into a mesh of dark and drab, lacking the creativity and variety found in the most recent Resident Evil games. A change of scenery really wouldn't be such a bad thing. Equally important is the excellent sound design. Although there isn't much music to speak of, the sound effects serve as a constant reminder of the horrible situation Isaac is in. Arguably, the sound is the most frightening part of Dead Space. Nothing is worse than hearing an enemy but not seeing it. It's terrifying to think that he can jump out at any moment, and when he finally does, rest assured he'll be accompanied by an even more jarring sound effect. Ultimately, Dead Space 2 is a sequel that holds very true to the original, neither tampering with the core experience nor offering anything drastically new. But what it does very well. The game is just about as frightening as the first time we were introduced to the Necromorphs in Dead Space 1. Marred by only a few flaws, this game is definitely worthy of a look from any survival horror fan. Dead Space 2's single player mode gets 4 stars out of 5, which works out to 1 star for every time I had to change my pants. Oh, and Dead Space 2 also has a multiplayer mode, and it works pretty well. Using a template similar to Left 4 Dead, players are divided into 2 teams, humans and necromorphs. The humans have to complete a series of objectives before time runs out, while the necromorphs have to stop them. Both sides are fun to play as, but I had a slight preference for the necromorphs, primarily due to being able to choose between any of 4 types: Pack, Lurker, Puker, and Spitter. Most of the types feel pretty distinct, with my personal favorites being the Lurker for its speed and terrifying face rape ability, and the Lurker for its minuscule size and wall climbing skills. And one really neat ability that the necromorphs have is being able to select which vent they spawn from. It actually adds some strategy, because where you spawn often dictates whether you live or die. Unfortunately, there isn't exactly a great amount of depth. While good teamwork is a plus, you'll never find yourself cooperating on the same level as in Left 4 Dead. Another thing to note is that, like with Resident Evil 5, playing a horror game with others simply isn't scary at all. But luckily, as we mentioned before, the campaign still delivers plenty of frights. So it's not really a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. All in all, Dead Space 2's multiplayer is a fun little addition, though the lack of options and depth make it clear this is more of an afterthought than a fully realized concept, especially when compared to games such as Left 4 Dead. I'm giving it a still respectable 3 stars. Make sure to visit GameXplain.com for more video game coverage.